Welcome to this edition of Africa 360. We are the show that unpacks news from right across the continent. We go beyond those headlines to certainly bring you what you won't see anywhere else. If it's about your continent, we'll be talking about it and bringing it to you. I'm Chris Maroleng, and this is Africa 360. In this edition, he's been at the helm of the Southern African Development Community for 8 years. But his tenure as the head of the regional body is coming to an end. This week on Africa 360, we speak to Dr. Tomaz Salomão about his achievements as SADC's Executive Secretary and, of course, the challenges the regional body still faces. Well, it's been 8 years since Dr. Tomaz Salomão was appointed as SADC's Executive Secretary. Back in 2005, though, the body was grappling with several major challenges, including regional economic integration and peace and security amongst member states. Salomão believes, though, that significant strides have been made on all of those fronts. He says conflict in the eastern DRC and the stalled political process in Madagascar are the biggest current challenges. I recently caught up with Dr. Salomão when he was here in South Africa, and I asked him about some of SADC's achievements. Well, joining me now is none other than the Executive Secretary of the Southern African Development Community, Dr. Tomaz Salomão. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on Africa 360. I think it's a very important time for us to have this conversation with you, particularly considering that you are approaching the end of your tenure as the Executive Secretary of the Southern African Development Community. You came in 2005 in August, and it's expected that in August of 2013, your tenure comes to an end. How would you describe the performance of SADC under your leadership?
Well, thank you very much. I don't think that I'm the right person to judge my performance.
Yeah.
I think that it's up to member states, it's up to the public, it's up to different stakeholders to judge what we have achieved so far, what kind of challenges we are facing, what kind of mistakes we did. But most important than that is the way forward. So I think that that's my personal view.
But one would argue, sir, that certainly others would judge your performance. But how do you feel, you yourself, do you feel you have achieved some of the goals that you intended to implement when you began in 2005?
When I joined SADC in 2005, the then chair, President Mohai, called me and we had a long discussion. The then president of Botswana.
Yes.
And he told me, Salomão, there are 3 things that you have to attend to. Number 1, we need to put in place a structure to deliver. The SADC Secretariat structure to deliver. Number 2, we need a headquarters of the Secretariat. Number 3, let's look to our milestones. Free trade area, customs union, common market, monetary union, single currency. What has to be done in order for us to attain in 2008 the free trade area? So those are the things that you have to do and report back to summit.
And do you feel that of those things that were assigned to you by President Mohai then, that you've achieved some of them, most of them, a few?
We have achieved some of them, most of them, though we face the challenges. And member states themselves decided to bring in other assignments that you need to take in consideration while you're implementing those milestones. So I think that when I present my report, and in fact I'm preparing my report, I said that that's the organization that I found in 2005, and that's what I hand over to the next person who will lead the secretariat.
But before we go there, one of the things that I find difficult to in fact, one of the key criticisms of SADC when you talk of reporting back to heads of state is that the institution has often been presented as a club of nationalist leaders, liberation leaders, who in the carrying on of their affairs find it difficult to engage each other on key questions related to governance. And in my view, that arises from the fact that there is very little in terms of normative values that unifies them, except for this common liberation, nationalism.
Well, I think that we need to look at things on a different perspective. Number one, you have a generation of leaders. Some of us, thank God, are still with us. In most of the countries, you had a change of leadership. Some of them, the case of Angola and Zimbabwe, well, the leaders are still the same, but in the case of Angola, you had the war and you had the democratic process. We can question whether how the democratic process was handled, but in fact, you had elections and the Dos Santos win. So the point is, you have a process, okay, where you see a change of leadership. But more important than that is always to remind ourselves that we came from the frontline states. And the only reason which brought member states together was, okay, let's fight against apartheid. That was the only reason. Let's help South Africa to liberate from the apartheid. And in 1994, that agenda was done.
Yeah.
So what next?
That's exactly the point, because it does appear on review when we look at the mindset of the leaders. You've articulated very nicely the generational shifts that we're seeing in SADC, but it still remains very much centralized within the heads of state. There doesn't seem within SADC to be an ideology of opening it up and allowing more inclusivity of the people of SADC. It's really about the heads of state.
I think that is a process. And today, you are bringing different stakeholders to implement your agenda. And that's when you bring the process of inclusiveness. Because you, in 1992, you decided that, okay, let's shift from coordination conference, to a community. And let's prepare a strategic plan of development where you have milestones. Peace and political stability, trade and economic liberalization, infrastructure development, water management, skills development. To do what? To attain to your major challenge, which is poverty eradication and economic development. You cannot attain poverty eradication and economic development if you don't bring other stakeholders on board.
But SADC itself, in a view, and we'll discuss this a little bit more when we look at the specific issues, appears to be toothless, ineffective in implementing changes in those member states around key governance questions.
I disagree with you. And why? Whether we like it or not, whether we accept it or not. Yes, you have challenges in Democratic Republic of Congo. You have challenges in Zimbabwe. You have challenges in Lesotho. You dealt with them. You have challenges in Madagascar. But the reality is today, this region is the most peaceful region in the continent. We have to accept, that's the fact.
How is your relationship with President Mugabe?
I think that the major concern for President Mugabe today is what kind of legacy he will leave behind.